Hello, good evening. Thank you for your company. Are Brits about to be given political asylum in the United States? In April, the podcaster and musician Winston Marshall asked this very pertinent question at the White House.
In Britain, we have had over a quarter of a million people issued non-crime hate incidents. As we speak, there are people in prison for quite literally reposting memes. We have extensive prison sentences and for tweets, social media posts, and general free speech issues. Would the Trump administration consider political asylum for British citizens in such a situation?
Well, to your latter question, it's a very good one. I have not heard that proposed to the president, nor have I spoken to him about that idea, but I certainly can and talk to our national security team and see if it's something the administration would entertain.
Yes.
Well, that was interesting, wasn't it? So Caroline Levitt there saying that she hadn't heard that proposal. That was in April. Well, now, fast forward some months, the New York Times thinks that very proposal is in fact happening. Here's the Times headline from a few days ago. Trump considers overhaul of refugee system that would favour white people. Well, the rabid left Times there has chosen to run with white people, particularly because, of course, it's obsessed with race. But the proposals being reported on also include Europeans who have been, quote, targeted for peaceful expression of views online, such as opposition to mass migration or support for populist political parties. So basically, European right-wingers, hurrah. Well, the asylum proposals presented to Mr. Trump earlier this year make the point that America's historical acceptance of refugees has made the country too diverse. And it suggests the administration only welcome, quote, refugees who can be fully and appropriately assimilated and are aligned with the president's objectives. So, could comedian Graham Linehan be in line to claim political asylum in the United States? He was, of course, arrested on arrival at Heathrow earlier this year after firing off gender-critical tweets about blokes who dress as women. And earlier today, the Met Police dropped that probe, and Graham, for now, is a free man. And in a massive win for free speech and, I argue, common sense, the Met also pledged to stop investigating so-called non-crime hate incidents too. Well, today, Graham spoke exclusively to GB News.
Americans already had the idea that England is a free speech, desert. And then when the first thing a bunch of Americans saw when the plane landed in the UK was a comedian being arrested, or a comedy writer, it's ridiculous. And so I think it's been a bit of a unfortunate episode. Unfortunately for me, it has also helped cement my reputation, which has been blackened by trans activists down through the years. So, again, the police just don't need to be helping these men. They can abuse people, harass people without the actual long arm of the law helping them out.
So, could Graham Linehan be one of the first people to claim political asylum in the United States under these proposed sweeping changes? And who else would be on your list at home? Lucy Connolly, for example? Sources told the Times that the president hasn't ruled out any of the proposals just yet, and there's no timetable for their implementation. Well, let's get the take now of the writer at Spiked Online, Candice Holdsworth. Candice, good evening. Thank you for your company. What do you make of the fact that this is being seriously mooted by the Trump administration, Candice? I understand that Secretary of State Marco Rubio has been well aware of Graham's case, and indeed Lucy Connolly, for quite some time. Could you see Brits en masse claiming asylum in the US?
Well, I know so many people who are so angry with what's been going on, but it's kind of like what you and Patrick Christys were discussing at the beginning of the show. Do we flee or do we stay and fight? I mean, Britain has such a proud tradition of freedom and liberty. I mean, we have all the greatest people who fought for these things. Like you mentioned, George Orwell, William Tyndall, John Stuart Mill. I mean, all these incredible people. And what's going on is our political and governing elites are betraying that tradition. And many people say, oh, you're over-exaggerating the free speech issue. We're nothing like Russia and China. People don't get killed for their political opinions in Britain. And you think, what a low bar. what a low bar you are setting. Meanwhile, other countries in the Anglosphere, countries that are really, so similar to us in terms of values and norms and standards, they look at us and they don't know what's going on. I think anyone who speaks to people outside Britain now is sometimes shocked with how other countries in the world are perceiving us. And I think that there has been, like I said, I think that the governing elite, or many within public bodies in this country, they have abandoned their commitment to freedom of expression. The non-crime hate incidents, for instance, that Graham Linehan was arrested and investigated over, that came from a quango. No one's ever debated that in Parliament. I mean, it was ruled that non-crime hate incidents were even ruled to be unlawful by the High Court. It's clear that things have become very ideological. We've got politicized policing, and people are beginning to notice it. The British public are beginning to notice it.
I think, Candice, I'm like you though. I would, and Patrick, I'd rather go down with the good ship Blighty than run off and escape the battle that's to be had. And James House, who's a viewer on gbnews.com/Your Say, has said something maybe to ponder over. James, you've said if reform doesn't get in at the next election, which I highly doubt they will be, I will take political asylum in the States. So it's a kind of, I guess, the next 3 or 4 or 5 years in the UK are going to be crucial, I'd argue, to the very existence, the very identity of the country for probably a couple of centuries forward.
Yeah, this is a very huge moment. It feels like one of history's turning points. It really does. Like I said, ordinary people are awake and alive to this problem now. And so once you're aware of the problem, you can begin to address it, and you can begin to put pressure politically on those who, like I said, have traduced these proud traditions. I think many people see reform as representing something new, that the other two political parties, the legacy political parties, Labour and Conservatives, have massively failed, so they're willing to take a risk on reform. I would just say in ordinary life, though, people need to start challenging these threats to our free expression. Don't self-censor. You say what you think. You are allowed to do that. You are a free-born English man or woman. You should be able to do that. If you're in a workplace that stifles your free expression, don't live a half life. Go somewhere where you're valued.
We're living in a time of what feels like pretty significant social change, and it makes us question things that we've even taken for granted for decades. And one of those at the moment that people are wondering about is actually money. Is the money in your bank account safe? Should you be investing elsewhere? Are we looking at a potential global crash? What will it mean for your savings? Is there a way that you could be using your money that might be outside of government control even? Well, TallyMoney is potentially one solution. So I'm delighted to say that I'm joined today by the CEO and founder of TallyMoney, Cameron Parry. What is TallyMoney?
Well, at TallyMoney, you basically get gold you can spend. So we give people an individual account in their name, everyday account. They get a sort code, an account number. They use that account just like they would pounds from their bank, but it's milligrams of gold that we brand as Tally.
Okay. Why would you do that, though? What is the benefit to the customer instead of just having a normal pound sterling account?
Gold's performance against the pound is above 11% per annum over the last 25 years on average. But we still need money in our daily lives, and we have savings. We know that it's good common sense and prudent to save up for things, not just live in credit. Whether it's a holiday or a rainy day, your retirement planning, you need to have money in your life, basically, that you can rely on, that's dependable, that nobody meddles with, that nobody can weaponize against you, which is another element of government control when it's the government currency, which we could talk about another time. And it should be pretty simple and straightforward. And that's what we deliver at Tally. And really, we just want people to feel safe and happy with their money. There was a time when the bigger your bank balance, the more confident you felt. Now it's like, I need to do something with it. I can't leave it there. In Tally, you can.
Okay, brilliant. Cameron Parry from TallyMoney, thank you so much.
Thank you, Bev.
Well said. OK, I'm going to bring in my panel now live in Washington. It's the Republican strategist Matthew Hertz and the former Obama policy advisor Laurie A. Watkins. Good evening, panel. Welcome along. Thank you for your company. Laurie, we'll start with you. What do you make of this proposal then? Because Trump, just from a wider perspective, Trump is slashing or wants to slash, or is at least considering slashing the refugee system down to around 7,500 per year. The Times have billed this as white people only, which isn't quite right. But what's your take on the fact that he could give asylum to, say, those who oppose migration or who have been persecuted for free speech?
Well, this is just another change coming out of the Trump administration. I'm trying to keep up myself here with all of these headlines. When Trump first was elected and sworn into office in January, you may remember that he came out saying that certain countries, mostly all in Africa, were no longer allowed here in the United States. Then he went so far, I think kind of based on the nudge and suggestion from Elon Musk, that this would include, though, white South Africans. And he brought, I think it was 25 individuals to the United States. So my head's on a swivel. I'm trying to keep up here because it seems to be changing, and this immigration or migration policies in this country are not consistent, and it really should be up to Congress to pass, which we need desperately, is immigration reform.
Matthew, what's your take? Is President Trump saving the West with this kind of... Again, I'll just stress, this is just proposals that have landed on his desk. He is considering them, but it's not been decided on and no timetable has been set. But if he did go ahead, is he, I don't know, as I said, saving the West with this?
Well, Graham Linehan, J.K. Rowling, the remaining members of Monty Python, the Flying Circus, all welcome to come to the United States. The reason that the United States has been successful for more than 225 years is that we've been a melting pot where people have assimilated to the culture as it exists in the U.S. This concept of freedom of speech, the rights that we have that are given by our Creator, our God-given rights, exist nowhere else in the world, not even in Great Britain. And so it is important for the people who come to this country after the first generation or into the second, they assimilate and they become American citizens, whatever that looks like in their communities. And so I think President Trump's America First policy, as it evolves, is something that will reflect that, reflect a return to America's greatness.
Yeah, we just had a great, well said, Matthew, as well. I agree with that. We just had another message on gbnews.com/your say. You're on fire tonight, guys, at home. Gaz, you have said the situation in the UK is quite similar to the US in the last election. It was either get Trump into power, it's just gone, get Trump into power and save the free world, or God knows where we'd be now with Kamala and Tim Walz. It's reform or doom for the UK. We need reform to stop the madhouse we all live in now. Matthew, what's your take on the political landscape in the US? You said we don't really have free speech, or you suggested that. Is that comment from Gaz there kind of, does it ring true to you?
Well, you know, my first trip to London was earlier this summer, and I was deeply concerned about my rights. You know, what I've seen from the story with Graham Linehan and others, it's deeply concerning. Again, the concept of the freedom of speech and the First Amendment as it exists in the United States does not exist anywhere else in the world. So I do think it is something that we should fight for, that we should accept and advance here in the U.S., and I hope it is something that returns to the people of Great Britain.
And Laurie, your former boss, President Obama, I was watching a clip of him the other day talking about how pretty much Trump is dismantling democracy with, for example, the ICE raids, no due process and so on. Is that something you'd go along with?
Well, I'd like to focus on First Amendment speech because here in this country, Donald Trump is trying to take that away, and we see that every single day, whether it's targeting through retribution and retaliation through people that used to work with him or people within that used to serve in the Justice Department, including firing people at DOJ who were assigned to work on January 6th and the insurrection that he caused. So freedom of speech, and taking away, he's trying to erode at the Voting Rights Act. He's trying to, the No Kings rallies that were happening. While the planning was going on with that, he came out and said, these are terrorists, these are anti-Americans, you hate America, and if we catch you, then there's going to be consequences. You can talk about Charlie Kirk also denying people entry into the United States. I think that's really a fine point to put on this, that all they did was like or retweet something. They didn't even author the tweets themselves. So I agree with what you're saying about Britain, about the UK, but that is not what is happening here in the United States. And so I think it's very hypocritical for Donald Trump to say that he would allow and bring people over here, but he's not protecting the people, the American people here in the United States.
But Candice, isn't the whole point of this that President Trump, these proposals, the New York Times story, is basically saying they want people in the country who go along with the mission, who are on message, who are not sort of troublemakers celebrating October the 7th or whatever else. I think, Laurie, you're referring to students on visas who are kicked out for things they said on campus. Yeah,
right.
So they're not American citizens, right? So, Candice, is that the kind of strategy you'd want to see from a leader in the UK? Like, you want people in the country, you want immigrants who are going along with what you have to offer the population, as opposed to people, for example, again, these people on campuses celebrating the likes of October the 7th, or even celebrating the assassination of Charlie Kirk.
Absolutely. I think that is one of the reasons why reform has become this insurgent movement. And you have people who've been lifelong Conservative voters or lifelong Labour voters basically giving up on these parties and going for reform because you don't see this valuing of citizens of the United Kingdom. Often people feel like immigrants to this country are treated better. You have people who've committed terrible crimes in this country and they don't even get deported when they do it. And people in the UK look at the US and they look at the massive success that the Trump administration has in reducing these issues and they think, well, we want that for ourselves.
Yeah, I'm just going to play you this clip. It's for Trump at the UN, where he said that he told all the world's leaders, your nations are going to hell. I just want to remind people of that. Here it is.
Europe is in serious trouble. They've been invaded by a force of illegal aliens like nobody's ever seen before. Illegal aliens are pouring into Europe.
So, Matthew, Trump there saying that everybody's countries are going to hell, but of course, Laurie's got some points there about the fact that, I mean, she claims that Trump is eroding free speech here, for example. Do you have any sympathy with Laurie's argument?
You know, we had a No Kings rally, with all due respect to your viewers, about 250 years ago, and I think our system of government is working pretty well. What we've seen over the last several years, over the last decade or so, is the weaponization of government, and I think we saw it predominantly under the Biden administration, and we're working to right the ship. I think that you have the opportunity to speak your mind in this country, to organize in the way that you see fit, and we saw that on Saturday with the No Kings rallies. I just vehemently disagree with the point of the protests.
Last word, Laurie?
Yeah, you guys all remember the Tea Party, right? I worked for President Obama, as we brought up. He never once threatened those people. He let people have free speech to protest, to organize, to do whatever they liked, as long as it remained within the bounds and was legal behavior and legal rights to use their freedom of speech. That's not happening here.
Okay, interesting. It's interesting hearing arguments from the left, Laurie, because Brits, I mean, many Brits back home will be looking at what's going on in the US with, they think you've got free speech here. I think you do when you compare it to Britain. They look at the deportations of the illegals and so on. And I can speak for a lot of people when they say, look, we love what's going on in the US. We'd love to be in your shoes. So it's interesting hearing the argument from the left when, you know, you're inside the theatre here and you're highlighting all these issues that you think are, you know, a threat to democracy, to the Constitution and so on. So it's very interesting indeed. Maybe we can swap. Laurie, you go to the UK and I come here?
Yeah, sure.
Swap?
Let's do it.
Okay. Right. Candice, thank you very much. Appreciate your company tonight and staying up so late. And thank you to Matthew and Laurie. You'll be back with me on the panel very, very shortly. Still ahead.